The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Vasily Podkolzin, famously drafted at 10th overall by your Vancouver Canucks. Vasily Podkolzin. That beauty. Has he played his last game for the Vancouver Canucks? More on that next year on Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer for Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks because it is your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe or follow us for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I also got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On Canucks, we got to talk about a guy who had a pretty, I guess we'll call it a semi-viral fight over the weekend, Vasily Podkolzin. Fighting to get back into the Canucks lineup, perhaps, although that seems like a long shot at this point, based on the way the team's playing.
I don't know. I'm thinking about something else. We'll get into that. Anyways, continue.
It almost feels more likely that he could be traded rather than that he plays another game for your Vancouver Canucks. So that's what we want to talk about off the top here on Locked On Canucks. In the second segment, we'll get into the recent report from Elliot Friedman that the Blackhawks potentially could be targeting Andrei Kuzmenko, what that might look like, and what the potential return could be. Because I think that's a fascinating conversation. And we'll end up with what's some mop-up duty here. Okay, Trevor's Notes presented by Kyle to wrap up the show. But before we
Did
get
you say Trevor's Jokes? Trevor's Jokes brought to you by Kyle. Is that what you said? Trevor's Notes or Trevor's Jokes?
I mean, I said Trevor's Notes. I don't got too many good jokes. Yeah. I got one about a nun and a bus driver. That's definitely not appropriate for this podcast, but that's another story. But before we get into any of that, you heard his voice right there. My brother, you can obviously tell we are twins, man. Born at the same time from different mothers. Crazy story. Kyle Bowen, how you doing, brother?
Crazy story. What a story, man, right? More on that on another episode of another show, okay? Anyways, Kyle Bowen, Trevor Beggs. Yes, another episode of Locked On Canucks, the show with that West Coast bias. Shout out to the podcast network that is Locked On. And also shout out to the Don't Dose Art Lab for doing their thing, supplying the West Coast bias for years and years and years. They're adding to the legacy, man. Anywho, subscribe, hit the like button. You know the deal, right? We're always here. And I guess we're always talking about, I wouldn't necessarily the future, but trades, acquisitions, new things for this first place team because, yeah, it's going to happen. The Canucks are going to make a trade pretty soon, IMO. You know how I said, I think, 9 days ago, if the Canucks go like 4-0-1 on this homestand, Alvin's going to make a trade ASAP because he had that interview with McIntyre. And, he pretty much said that, yeah, they're going to want to supply goods to this core because they deserve it, but he still wants to see how they do down the stretch. Well, I think they've proven it, okay? This team is legit. They're doing their thing. They're not stopping, and new blood is entering the fold. And if that's going to happen and you don't want to trade Lekkerimaki, and you don't want to trade Willander, look, there's a 64% chance that Vasily Podkolzin will get traded for that new player being brought in. That is just the truth. It's just the truth. Now, before we continue, we got a super chat. Shout out to Steven. He's asking us if any of us bid on those shiny blue helmets. Look, I say it all the time, okay? Hit the like button, subscribe, so one day me and Trevor can buy those helmets. Anyways, Beggsy. One love to Steven. But yeah, Beggsy, I'm telling the truth, right? If the Canucks want to add to their top six, you know the deal. They got to trade Vasily Podkolzin, right?
It seems like pretty close. Again, you said 64% chance. I actually think that might be a pretty accurate number. Look, I read one report out of Calgary. Maybe we'll touch on this later in the week even, but read one report out of Calgary about potential trade scenarios for Elias Lindholm. And the package they put forth for the Canucks if they were trading for Elias Lindholm was Andrei Kuzmenko, a first-round pick, and Nils Höglander.
Whoa.
Get Nils Höglander out of that trade. Yeah. And then, put Podkolzin, Kuzmenko in a first-rounder for Elias Lindholm. Is that realistic, and would you do it?
I would do it. And you know why I hesitate in saying that? Partially, like in my soul, I know I said that pretty quick. Like I do it, but my soul is telling me, like, oh, I don't know. It's because I'm actually really proud of Vasily Podkolzin. I mean, I think he's elevated his level of professionalism this season. Okay, like he's always been a gamer. He's always the guy, that's last off the rank. Talk has made that clear. He wants Podkolzin to succeed. But going back to September, I mean, this guy was one of the worst players in training camp, and then he gets sent down, and right away he succeeds. So that just shows me his level of resiliency within this system is fitting. It's working, and he's taking his steps. And then you see how he gets hurt early on in the season after having a terrific start. He gets a head injury, and then what goes viral this weekend over the last couple of days? It's not only that big fight that shows his toughness. I mean, again, head injury, new family man, willing to do whatever for the team, though, put his life on the line, fighting a guy that's 30 pounds heavier than him and doing great, doing his thing, but also coming back from that injury and still supplying the offense. I think I saw a highlight from 5 days ago, of this guy going bar down on the power play. So his stats are there. He succeeded. So again, even though I was like, yeah, I'll do it. We got to do it. We got to supply help for this top six. I do kind of hesitate in wanting to trade Podkolzin because I actually think now there is a player there.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. When you look at that potential trade for Lino or whoever, right? You're trading away a first-round pick and Vasily Podkolzin. Look, I know the Canucks are one of the best teams in the league. I get that this is the season to go all in. The first-round pick and Podkolzin are expendable. But so are noting you don't got a lot of the pipeline, right? Like, if this season goes awry for whatever reason, or, the Canucks Cup window is shorter than we imagine, all of a sudden you look at a situation where you have one of the worst prospect pools in the league, which is what the Canucks currently have right now. And with Podkolzin, it's a bit different because, look, we're talking about a guy who's in year 5 after being drafted, right? He was drafted in 2019. We're in 2024 right now. He's yet to establish himself as an everyday NHL player. But to your point, Cal, he's taking steps and going in the right direction.
He has. Right? I mean, isn't this the season that, like, he could have taken multiple steps back? You know what I'm saying? Like, this was the year. Then you hear all the noise in September. He gets sent down, and then he has a good start in the AHL, and then he gets injured. And it's like, okay, everything's going against me, but I feel as if he's just bought into whatever the Canucks are preaching, and it's also leaning in / combining with his skill set and his traits, and he's looking like, I'll say this, man, he's looking like a player that the Canucks could use. Because if you look at guys like Mikheyev and Kuzmenko, who have struggled a lot recently, especially Kuzmenko, like, why wouldn't we? Based on what I'm seeing from the Podkolzin highlights all season long, like, I kind of want to see Podkolzin play with Pedersen or something, give him a shot, just because why not? And Kuzmenko sucks right now.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll get to Kuzmenko on the other side, but with Podkolzin, I won't say you're selling like at his absolute ceiling right now, because again, he hasn't established himself as an everyday NHLer, but compared to last season where he was lost in the NHL and the AHL, he's looked way better than that season, right?
Yeah,
13 goals, 25 points in 33 games. So
dude,
he's pushing a point a game in the AHL. Yeah. And, he's playing power play. He scored some highlight reel goals. Dude. To me, this is still a player, though, with third line potential at the NHL level, right? Like, maybe you could boost him by playing with the Pedersen or something like that. But at the end of the day, if there's a team who really loves Podkolzin, really loves the skill set, obviously he's got a maturity about him. He's got leadership attributes. There's things to like about Podkolzin, but at the end of the day, when you're building a team, he's not a core piece. He's another guy.
Whoa.
And
you think so?
I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. No, fair enough. I just think that, again, like, based on what I've seen from him recently, I'm kind of like, if the Canucks weren't a first place team, I'm like, and like, let's say they were a middling team and just fighting for a playoff spot, or, just even above the playoff bar, I'm like, I'm excited for Podkolzin. Like, it's getting better. But because of where we're at and how our top six, especially after Miller, Besser, and Pedersen are playing, like, it's just the truth. And that's the narrative is changing. It's Stanley Cup or bust. Like, you got to go after the cup, and you got to get better at your top six. And if you're not trading Lekaramak or Willander, I'm sorry, Podkolzin is going to be a guy that's going to be used in every single trade package. It's the truth. It's either him or Atu Ratu, but I don't even know how much value he has right now. And I don't think, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's still more pedigree in somebody like Podkolzin versus a guy like Archie Bains as well. You know what I'm saying? It's just impossible for me to see any trade offers that involve guys like Elias Lindholm or any of those other top guys, with, again, not seeing that first round pick and not seeing that Podkolzin guy in the trade package. And, I might want to add this too. Like, I'm okay with the Canucks trading a first round pick this season. No problem at all.
Oh, yeah.
No problem at all.
Yeah. I think we all feel the same way, right? We know it's going to be a late first round pick. Again, we don't have to like lottery protect or anything like that. Like this team's going to make the playoffs. And even if they win the division, right, like that pick's going to be a bottom 5 pick in the first round. So, I mean, I think it's almost a given that they're trading that pick this year. It's just who do they trade that pick for? And again, is it one big transaction or a couple different ones, right? Because again, we're going to get to on the other side. Maybe you trade Kuzmenko in one transaction, clear up cap space, and then make another deal in another transaction. Very much like they did with Beauvillier and Zadorov when they came to town originally. One last point I'll make on Podkolzin is, he does have to be part of a bigger trade, you'd think.
Yeah.
And one player that we semi compared him to earlier this season was Tage Thompson. I mean, shout out to the everydayers; they know this. If you were not an everydayer or did not hear that episode, you might go like, "What the hell are these guys talking about?" But it was more so to do with Tage Thompson being a late bloomer. Both guys had similar skill sets in the sense that they both had kind of drive the net. I mean, Tage Thompson's obviously more skilled than Podkolzin, but Tage Thompson, as a prospect, a young player, was involved in a pretty significant trade for Ryan O'Reilly. So it was basically, St. Louis traded 2 roster players, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and Tage Thompson, who was also a first-round pick himself, for Ryan O'Reilly. So it was a massive, massive trade. I don't know if the Canucks make something like that, but if they do, I could see it involving Podkolzin as well.
Yeah. And I know people are like super scared of situations like that where you can give away a guy and fast forward 14 months later, this guy turns into a 30, 40 goal scorer. And you never know with Podkolzin. He could still be like that 50, 60 point guy. But at the end of the day, St. Louis won a cup because of that trade.
Yeah, 100%, right?
Go ahead.
No, it's a great point. And I think the Canucks would be in a position where they would be more likely to make a trade like that. Like you traded Kuzmenko, Podkolzin, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, in one big trade. If it's a guy like Gensel or Lindholm, and you sign him to an extension.
Yeah.
That's when they're going to give up more assets, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. Okay, let's get to the comments. One love to the comments. JS also giving us a super chat and keeps it simple all the time, man. JS never wants to shine, okay? He just always wants to tell the people that it's only about the Canucks. And he always says, go Canucks, go. It's a beautiful comment. And you and I are on that same boat. We've been on that boat for our whole lives. Before we loved our wives or our girlfriends, our loves, our children, our parents. We loved the Vancouver Canucks first. Okay, it's just the truth. Callum Sandu, good job solo on yesterday's episode. Yo, some people got really upset with yesterday's episode. They were commenting and then they were deleting their comments because I think they started watching the episode because the episode was titled, like, in quotations, the Vancouver Canucks had to trade Brock Besser -2023 because isn't it so fascinating? Like, before we get to Kuzmenko, like, I got to ask you that question because you were alongside Callum, right? Like, you guys did not want Brock Besser to be traded. And look at what he's done, 30 goals in 49 games. JS also mentioned that, Brock Besser could have had more goals this season, whether he hit post or disallowed goals. This guy's on fire. And I'll add this to the question I'm asking you. Don't you think that he can get better? Like Brock Besser, I feel as if there's still that ability for him to be more flash oriented, like giving us some more bar down goals. I know he's done it a couple times this season, but I think that there is still more to Brock Besser's game. I'm happy with what he's doing because he's doing it at a top tier level. But again, I think he can be a bit of an X factor for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll say I think he's pretty close to his peak right now. And I think, a reason you're not seeing as many of those bar down goals isn't a fundamental change in his game, right? He knows that he's the goal scorer on that line. And JT Miller in general is going to get the puck to Besser in front of the net. So there will be some opportunities for him to score those bar down goals, but I think this is pretty much the apex of Brock Besser's powers. Based on his age, his career arc. I mean, I think you're seeing peak Brock Besser right now. I don't know if there's that much room to improve. Not to be negative about it, but he's playing pretty damn well.
There's been a couple games this season where I've seen Brock be more aggressive in the sense of like holding on to the puck and just wanting it. You know how like Pettersson and Miller kind of drive play? There's been glimpses of Besser wanting to do that. And, maybe he just does it in spurts because it's in him, but then he kind of settles down and just plays his role. This all being said, I do again think that we are going to see flashes of that rookie Brock Besser more often sometime in the playoffs. And that's me assuming the best and being delusional because I want the Stanley Cup, okay? I also want the Canucks to sign Pettersson. Last comment before we get to break. JS saying, we need the whole city chanting, I guess, Pettersson's name to show, PD that, he's got to stay here because I know there's more noise around Pettersson on Twitter right now. It just keeps happening. It's going to keep happening without him signing. This all being said, I said it yesterday. A lot of those guys have never heard Rogers Arena or Vancouver in April. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that gets the job done. Anyways, Trevor, let's get to break. One love to all the listeners. Locked On Canucks, man, nothing without you and you and you and you, and also nothing without Trevor's mom.
Shout out
If
to
you
my
think about
mom.
it. Yeah.
It's her birthday in a week from now. So
Beautiful.
she's a big Canucks fan, obviously. So shout out to my mom. Shout out to JS. At the other side, we will talk about Andrei Kuzmenko and the Chicago Blackhawks. But first, I got to shout out eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Okay, we back on Locked On Canucks. My name is Kyle Bowen, the Hindu on the program, and that's Trevor Beggs, the financial advisor, the legend. Dude, just a journalism major too, man. If you guys don't know this, me and Beggsy went to journalism school together. Who finished? He did. Who didn't? I didn't. Why? That's because my girlfriend cheated on me, man, at the time, and I was depressed. It happens, man. It happens.
Look at that. We ended up at the same place, man. Yeah, we both dated girls who were actually into girls, and we both got to Locked On Canucks through different
crazy.
avenues, man.
That's crazy. Yo, you can't make this ish up, yo. I feel like you and I should be at the All-Star game, man. Straight up.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form, man. Maybe in 2029 we'll be there. Locked On Canucks has to do a skills competition. I got to work on my ball hockey skills, man. Plan on playing some ball hockey here in the spring. So,
well, okay,
I'll bring it in the 2029 All-Star game.
I guess this is a good segue, right? Because I think a lot of people still believe that there's a chance in Kuzmenko being a star player, like being an all-star, possibly, one day down the road. And then we had Dwight just commenting this. Oh, sorry. Dwight said this. If the Canucks trade Kuzmenko, they are dumb. Dude, if the Canucks traded Brock Besser, they would be dumb. If the Canucks listened to me, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, they'd be dumb. They wouldn't be in first place. Kuzmenko has been, again, I'm going to say this, and I don't mind saying it because it's just the truth, man. He's been bad. Like, he's shown glimpses, but then he can't ever build on those glimpses. For real. It's just the truth. And he had an opportunity to do so against St. Louis and against Columbus. In retrospect, like games that kind of needed somebody outside of the big dogs who are going to the All-Star game, someone outside of the third line to do something, and Kuzmenko was invisible. In fact, Kuzmenko and Mikheyev, both guys have been invisible. Kuzmenko and Mikheyev making me think that the Canucks need 2 top 6 players to really go for it this season. Anyways, if the Canucks do trade Kuzmenko to Chicago, which may happen in a couple days, are we going to regret it, or is it what it is? Like, it's not a match made to happen here in Vancouver, and that's Tocchet in this system and where the Canucks are in their trajectory right now with Kuzmenko.
There's a chance the Canucks regret it, right? And I think we've heard Jim Rutherford allude to this as well. You got to take risks sometimes, and sometimes there's risks in not making any risks, right? You could run it back with this team, and if they flame out in round 1 or have a short playoff run, then you're going to be questioning everything, right? They could trade Kuzmenko and not work out either, right? So there's risk in anything you do. But to your point, Kyle, Kuzmenko has not fit in with the system. He's not fit in with Rick Tocchet, really going back to last season. And I do think teams who are in the Canucks position are more likely to make dumb trades, right? Like contenders will make dumb trades, trading away assets for pennies on the dollar, giving up big assets for a guy who helps out for a couple months. Contenders like the Canucks are more willing to make dumb trades. Now, we'll see what they do. But to me, this doesn't seem like one of the trades I alluded to a few minutes ago where you trade like Kuzmenko, Podkolzin the first, second, and one big trade for Gensel, and then you sign him. Like, to me, this kind of seems like 2 separate transactions. And you got to see what is the most you can get for Andrei Kuzmenko. because, I saw Dwight Schrute commenting on the show. My God, man, I'm a big fan of you, Dwight. Big fan of The Office. You got to see what team's willing to pay the most for Kuzmenko. And like, what do you, like, Kyle, I'll ask
What
you,
is
man.
the most, though? It's a third-round pick. It's a fourth-round pick. Don't you think? Like, it's nothing. It's a salary dump, isn't it? Like, bro, Kuzmenko's been pretty bad. Like, pretty bad. Look at his numbers. He's playing with the top guys. Look at his numbers.
I honestly think the eye test does him more of a disservice than the numbers, right? Like, I look at his his even strength scoring profile. He's scoring like a second line winger right now. It was a first line winger earlier in the season, even when he was struggling. But 8 goals, 21 points in 43 games.
Didn't he have 2 points in January? Something like 4 points in January. Mikheyev, I think, had 2 points. I don't know, man. I just
Mikheyev's had six. Mikheyev's had 6 assists since his last goal, over a month ago.
Yeah. Kuzmenko, man. Like, even
they both struggled.
I think it was against St. Louis where, like, he had a really bad first period, and also at the same time a pretty electrifying first period too. Like, he had some chances, and then he ended up like sitting on the bench, looking up to the sky during like the first intermission while his whole team was in the locker room. Like, he's in his head right now, man. And can this team afford to have anyone in their heads prior to the dance? Because we're talking about a first place team, a team that's been in first place for the majority of the season, a team that's actually pretty deep right now, a team that has a lot of UFAs, a team that's going to go all in. Like, the mindset is different. This team could win the cup. And yeah, Kuzmenko, I don't think he fits the equation, man. It sucks. I like the guy. I just don't know if there's time and essentially cap space for them to kind of wait this out. Because if they wait this out, I think it's going to get fixed next season, a la Brock Besser,
Yeah. Again, it's a risk, right? Kuzmenko could certainly just bounce back and prove us all wrong. So, like, to me, I think you do want to get like an early third or late second round pick. Now, the interesting thing about Chicago are 2 things in my mind. For one, Kuzmenko played arguably his best game of the season against the Chicago Blackhawks, right? I did that solo episode. Has Andrei Kuzmenko found his mojo, or is it a 1-game aberration? Turns out, kind of looks like it was a 1-game aberration against a bad team, but that Chicago Blackhawks team is apparently interested in Kuzmenko. They have the cap space to trade for him. And you know what? They have obviously a ton of draft capital. They actually have the Canucks second round pick, right? That was the pick that was traded in the Jason Dickinson, Riley Stillman trade. So the Canucks are theoretically back for their own second round pick if they want to dump off Kuzmenko and his salary. To me, you clear found out second back, or even Chicago trades their third round pick. Like, what's the difference in the Canucks late second, Chicago's early third is probably like 5 draft slots, right? So that kind of trade, dump that salary, and then you can acquire a guy like Gensel or Lindholm or whoever. That's got some appeal to me.
Trevor, man, you're talking all in more and more these days too, man. You've only mentioned the big dogs. You haven't mentioned Boone Jenner. You haven't mentioned Adam Enrique. You know what I'm saying? You haven't mentioned Jeff Sanderson, right? You haven't mentioned Eric Weinrich.
Let's go.
You know what I'm saying?
Worst trade in Canucks history.
You're just talking about the big dogs, man. I like it, man. I like it. Dude, it may happen. I'm going to say this again. We're going to be surprised. A lot of people have actually been mentioning this, okay? The Canucks may be looking at a player that nobody has on their list. Alvin Rutherford on another level. Hey, the Vancouver Canucks could be looking for 2 players because Ilya Mikheyev is kind of struggling too. And Ilya Mikheyev, I'm not going to lie, he would look pretty good in the bottom 6 on a deep team.
Yeah. Well, come on. I've been saying that since the summer, man. Like, I don't think Mikheyev is a top 6 winger, right? Like, he can be a complimentary piece for sure. But in general, I think he's best suited to the bottom 2 lines. Now, I think there's a world where you boost Hoglander up the lineup and bump Mikheyev down, especially the way that those 2 have both been playing recently. So, yeah. And again, we got Dwight Schrute from The Office agreeing with us here on the YouTube live stream. So Canucks do have options. Obviously, they're a deep team right now, which is nice, and they can afford more so the last season to ship a guy out like Kuzmenko. Like, if you ship out Brock Besser for pennies on the dollars last season, wouldn't have made a ton of sense. But with Kuzmenko, trading him based on the way he's playing, based on the fact that this seems like an all-in year for the Canucks, it just makes too much sense.
Buddy, a lot's going to happen, man. Again, first place, going into the All-Star game. You know what I like about it too, man? You know what I like about the situation, right? People are bringing up, the Canucks are not alone in first place. Boston is there with them. Who do we play right after we get back from this break? I'm pretty sure we play Boston, Carolina. You know, all those good teams.
Yeah, it's Carolina and then Boston, yeah.
So, man, come on, man. We're going to prove the doubters wrong and wrong and wrong. And again, before we get to the third segment, I got to say it again. Let the Oilers win and win some more and win some more. I'm not scared of them. And you better not be scared of them too. Okay? Do you think the Canucks can wreck their chemistry if they bring in 1 or 2 players? I don't think so. I think Quinn Hughes at the top of the list isn't going to allow that to happen. You know what I'm saying? Just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, commentator's right. Like if you make too many trades, you're going to ruin the chemistry. But how many trades are the Canucks actually going to make? Right? They're not going to overhaul this whole team. They're probably going to add a guy or two. Right? That's the way it's going to go. So, no, I'm not worried about that. I am worried about getting to the final segment, man. We're at 25 minutes here. Locked On Canucks. It's a Monday.
Canucks.
We got lots to say. We got to shout out a sponsor here, and then we'll wrap up the show with Trevor's Notes presented by Kyle. Only just a note or two, and maybe we'll see if we can get some more of your comments. But before we do any of that, I got to shout out FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Kyle, for Super Bowl Sunday, what are your plans, buddy?
Dude, you know the deal. I don't watch any football games that don't involve the Green Bay Packers, okay? I'm way too petty. I'm producing like 8 different podcasts right now. I'm so behind schedule right now, okay? So I don't got no plans. I'll watch the fourth quarter, last 10 minutes.
Unbelievable, man. All right.
Dude.
Well, okay. Well, whether you're like Kyle and you barely watch the game or you sit down and watch the whole game, you can place a bet no matter what with FanDuel, okay? FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or even 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
We back on this conversation about your Vancouver Canucks, Locked On Canucks. Shout out to the podcast network that is Locked On, and also again to the Don't Dose Art Lab. Subscribe and hit the like button to allow us to do the most with our girls. All right, Valentine's Day coming up. The more subscriptions we get, we might get a little $50 bonus here, and that means what? That means get whatever you want, baby. I got you. You get what I'm saying? At the dinner table. Anyways, before we get to more Canucks talk, Begsy, you just had a weekend. I got to ask you the question. How you doing?
Fantastic, man. Lots of family time. Every weekend I get to spend the full day with my kids is a good one.
Dude, you're the second best dad in the world, man. I texted Trevor yesterday because I text him every time I do a solo episode, only because I'm not really trying to. I can't do a solo episode without asking Trevor. That's just not the team way to do it. Okay, you get what I'm saying? And when I don't get a response, I know I got to go solo. It's just the truth. But I'm not surprised that you didn't join me because, again, burgers, man. Lettuce burgers, man. Right? That was the whole thing yesterday, man. Lettuce burgers, yam fries, right? I know the deal, man. Anyways, speaking of the deal, do you think the Canucks, I know we have to get to Trevor's notes, but I like this comment from Aaron, okay? Tyler Toffoli. Now, he's saying for Kuzmenko, that's not going to happen because Kuzmenko's pretty bad right now. But I've been hearing this, man. I think Sportsnet was talking about this too. New Jersey, they could be struggling. And if that's the case, can Tyler Toffoli be on the trade market?
I'd be pretty surprised. But he was such a great fit before. Like if the Canucks could get Toffoli, that would be a fantastic fit, right? Toffoli again, UFA, so you wouldn't be totally shocked. I think the Devils are going to hold on to him unless there's really a massive collapse here. They're right on the precipice of entering the playoffs. That's an interesting one. I would certainly be interested in Tyler Toffoli if he was available.
Dude, it's one of those off years for the Devils. A lot of injuries, okay? Things happen. Now, again, if they're out of it, 5 or 6 points out of the playoff spot before the trade deadline, Tyler Toffoli is definitely on the block. We'll get to more of your comments in a couple of minutes. But first, we got to run Trevor's Notes. Is that the segment name? Do we have an intro for Trevor's Notes here?
We sure do. Trevor's Notes presented.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I got lost, okay? Couldn't see the button. Begsy, don't fire me. Anyways, Trevor's Notes brought to you by Kyle. Tyler Myers is fined. I didn't even know that. I was on Twitter today. He got fined today?
Yeah, he got fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the CBA for his elbow on Sean Corrali. And I wanted to bring this up too because, look, I get that the NHL is trying to pretty much calling infractions on anyone who touches somebody's head, but Tyler Myers he didn't even mean to really hit him with the elbow. He hit him and then like got turned around and accidentally elbowed him in the face, right? So to me, it's like, okay,
you think that
first
hurt?
of all, oh, it definitely hurt. Like Sean Crowley's bleeding on his jersey, man. Are you kidding
Oh,
me?
that probably,
But
oh,
like,
dude.
yeah. But like just the whole sequence, man, in the game, the fine today. It's like first they review Tyler Myers' penalty, even though Ian Cole's originally called. I'm pretty sure that's not in the rules. In fact, I saw some posts that say you can't just review a penalty on a guy that wasn't even involved in the initial infraction that got called. So that whole thing was BS. And I think the fine's kind of BS too, because you're fining someone for accidentally swinging around. It's not like he went to go hit him and like caught the head with his shoulder like Brendan Gallagher did. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm being a bitter Canucks fan right now, but I thought it was a bit of BS. Not that Tyler Myers can't afford it or anything, but
it's the East, man. It's the East, Toronto. They're trying to ruin us, man. They wanted us to lose that game, right? They went to the operations room. They made the phone call and boom, let's give this guy they mixed it up. It was kind of weird. We're talking about the East too, trying to get in Pedersen's head too, trying to get into Tocchet's head, changing headlines, causing a circus. It is what it is, man. Can't let anything get in the way though. Anyways, we did win the game, so I'm not going to really harp on this too much. It is what it is. Nobody can stop us. F the ops. I've been saying that day in and day out. How about this one? Danila Klimovich, right? I said that right. We're talking a bit about the Abbotsford Canucks on today's episode. He scores in back-to-back games. Are the Canucks going to trade him?
I mean, Dan Milstein client, maybe ship him up with Andrei Kuzmenko. I just wanted to bring this up too, because Danila Klimovich was obviously pretty intriguing prospect, goes to the AHL right after being drafted. He's now put with the Abbotsford Canucks. This is his third season with the Abbotsford Canucks. It's been a healthy scratch for most of the year. It's been a really bad, disappointing year for Danila Klimovich. And I mean, he's got such an intriguing skill set that you hope this is the start of something, but these were his first 2 goals of the season. The guy has 2 goals, 4 points in 15 games. Been largely invisible in most of the Abbotsford Canucks games I've watched. So he's a young guy. He's only 20 years old. But yeah, for me, there's some cause for concern there out to Klimovich. But I just want to shout him on the notes, give him one love, man. Hopefully you pick it up.
Okay.
Do some damage to the Abbotsford Canucks come playoff time.
Dude, Danila's a nice name. Yeah, I could name my daughter that or my son that. Danila.
You should tell that to Danila Klimovich.
I will one day, man. Last note, Mikheyev. He's being asked to pick it up via Rick Tocchet's mouth, and I've said that too on multiple episodes of Locked On Canucks. Now, again, I'm not too worried about Mikheyev. I think people are like really, really frustrated in him, but I think that not seeing him score in like 13 or 14 or 15, whatever the number is, like it's alarming. But at the same time, I am curious to see if this is part of the story for the Vancouver Canucks, and that's them getting notified from the hockey universe / the games that they're played that, maybe this cup contending team doesn't need to go into the playoffs with Mikheyev in their top 6. You know what I'm saying? And they're a better team if they do go quote unquote all in and they get a couple of top 6 wingers or whatever. They do their thing and they replace Mikheyev in the top 6. He gets bumped down and overall we become a better team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm honestly not too worried about him either, although you do wonder, he comes back from that, major knee surgery and looks great off the hop, right? Like showcasing the speed, getting on the score sheet. And now I'm kind of wondering, like, is this just a cold streak or is the knee starting to bug him?
Whoa.
Because if it's the latter, that's a bigger issue. If it's the former, then I'm not too worried because I think it's probably just a cold streak and that he'll figure it out. Like, he's still a good hockey player. He's got a good skill set. I just hope there's nothing no lingering injury issues with him. It's kind of my main concern.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think it's confidence. I think that he's also spending a lot of time playing with Kuzmenko too. And bro, even Pedersen recently 5-on-5 hasn't been really great. It's a combination of things. It really is. That's just the truth. Anyways, that was Trevor's Notes brought to you by Kyle. Let's get to the comments before we get out of here. Man, oh man. People, man. Look at this. JS. Again, saying outside media trying to create a false narrative to destroy the locker room. Bro, the East don't want the West winning the Stanley Cup, okay? It's just the truth. I feel that, man. I'm still pissed off about that article that was written or the headline that was written for that article regarding Tocchet and Pedersen. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, how about Dwight? If the Canucks trade draft picks, this team will be doomed next year and beyond. Dwight, chill out. Chill out, okay? You know why I say chill out? Because I get it. I get where it's coming from, right? Because we're only, 14 months? No, not even, 11 months removed from celebrating the Horvat trade. Oh, we got draft picks. Asset management. We're doing it. Because that's what the Canucks should be doing at that time in their trajectory. Now, It's only been 11 months later, but look at us now. It's completely flipped. And you could say that like this is pretty lucky and they need to stay the course and still take it slow. But the way they flip the script with the players that they have kind of writes a different story, writes a different narrative. And it is what it is. Like, I'm not saying Canucks fans were wrong for them to pray and hope for draft picks. I'm just saying it is what it is. And what it is right now is completely different. Your team is stacked. Their best players are playing right up to their potential. Like in retrospect, or theoretically speaking, or in hindsight, whatever term is right, we would want the Canucks to go all in if this is the way it looked a couple years from now. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, we need to wait till we're in this position to go all in to trade draft picks. Like, it's an obscure situation, but it is what it is. And you got to reward these players.
I'm just glad we're having these conversations, man. Canucks going all in, buying at the deadline. Your Stanley Cup contending Vancouver Canucks, the best goddamn team in the NHL. I'm stoked that we're here and able to do this, Kyle. And guess what? There's no games this week, so there's lots of time for trade speculation. So
yeah, we'll get into
it. If you're listening, if you want to maybe throw out some potential deadline proposals for
look
the
at this one,
Canucks, we'd love to get into them and read them on air. We got Matt Folger saying shout out to Folger's Coffee. Actually, not a big shout out to Folger's Coffee. McCabe is a decent asset, which makes him tradable for an upgrade. You're gonna trade McCabe, and what are you gonna get in return? I mean, I'd be interested to see what a trade proposal like that looks like. But yeah, it's that one's tough for me to imagine. I have to wrap my head around what that could possibly look like.
Oh my God, that is something else, man. Okay, let's say they replace, they move things around. They get one more top 6 player. They move Höglander up. They pair him up with Pettersson and that top 6 player. They trade Kuzmenko, and then you get Pius Suter, Sam Lafferty, and Mikheyev on a 4th line. I feel like that line has potential to be like right below the amount of intensity / efficiency that Blueger's line is bringing. Okay. Anyways, Locked On Canucks, Kyle Bound, Trevor Beggs. We got to get out of here. More trade talk all week. Beggsy, sign us out.
Hey, shout out to the everydayers, occasional listeners, first-time listeners, new subscribers. And you know what? The people who join us here on our live YouTube show, we love each and every one of you, your families and your dogs too. Thanks for spending, whether you spent the whole show with us or part of the show with us, we love and appreciate all of you. Coming up this week, more trade talk. I also want to talk about Oilers versus Canucks. Who has the better cup odds? And guess what? Tomorrow's the 1-year anniversary of a pretty massive Canucks trade. So we'll touch on that as well. For now, I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bowen, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Hit the like button, subscribe. One love, peace.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.